Over the past several months, NASA has been publishing remarkable images from the James F. Webb Space Telescope that was launched on December 21st, 2021. And in the process, they have opened new windows into the mystery of the universe that are astounding. Here are just a few of the images that have recently been published. The clarity and the beauty of these photographs is stunning. We are now able to see details and vistas of the stars that give us new perspectives as to the origins and meaning of life. What a time in which to live. Actually, since this is Kol Nidre, I need to confess something. 3 of these images are from the Webb telescope. The last one is not. It is a piece of chorizo, Spanish salami. That was actually posted by a French astronomer named Etienne Klein, the director of France's Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission. He shared the purported James Webb Space Telescope image on July 31st, claiming that it was, quote, a photo of Proxima Centauri, the closest star to the sun, located 4.2 light years from us. Tens of thousands of people saw the image and were delighted by its clarity. And when the hoax was uncovered, the condemnation, you can imagine, was immediate and intense. Now, while Klein asserted that it was a joke in good, clean fun, many others were angered. In response, Klein wrote, according to contemporary cosmology, no object related to Spanish charcuterie exists anywhere else than other on Earth. He then went on to say this was a cautionary tale, and he tweeted, let us learn to be wary of arguments from authority as much as of the spontaneous eloquence of certain images. In other words, just because something with a fancy title says something, it doesn't mean it is true until proven as such. Now, I actually think it's hilarious. But then again, I'm no physicist. But there is a deeper significance to this prank than simply replacing stardust with cold cuts. Trafe at that. The fact is, it's becoming increasingly difficult to believe our eyes in the face of the constant barrage of attempts to manipulate and distort the truth that we are facing in our current day. How many times over the course of the past several years have we watched as power-hungry parasites have twisted the truth in order to justify their narcissistic, paranoid, and hate-filled agendas? From vaccine skeptics to science deniers, from anti-Semites who call Zionism racism, to Vladimir Putin's obscene attempts to justify his megalomaniacal designs on Ukraine, from election deniers who support the rioters and seditionists that attacked our capital on January 6th, from those whose actions have denied women the right to control their own bodies, to those who strive to maintain a status quo based on racism and oppression. Truth is increasingly threatened by self-righteous individuals who believe that their understanding of truth must be imposed on everyone else. And so tonight, on this holiest night of the year, I want to talk about truth. In the beginning of the service, we listened to the ancient and hauntingly beautiful melody of Kol Nidre, chanted by our beloved cantor sax. And our tradition teaches that we stood before God, our souls bared, our deepest secrets on display as we listened. This day, from sundown tonight until sunset tomorrow, is all about the truths of our lives. All pretense is gone, all barriers are broken. We examine our life story and resolve to correct the mistakes, missteps, and regrets that we have brought with us into this new year. Now, looking at those images from the Webb telescope, chorizo notwithstanding, it's important to understand that what we saw in those photographs traveled billions of light years until it reached us. And those images that filled our screens seemed close enough to touch, but that is an illusion. What we saw was ancient light that traveled an incomprehensible distance before arriving in our field of vision. Those incredible vistas, in all probability, no longer exist, at least not in the form that we have observed. But they are a part of our reality right now. Our lives are on a trajectory. As the brilliant sage Joni Mitchell wrote, we're captive on a carousel of time. We can't return. We can only look behind from where we came. Our past is our greatest teacher, if we are open to exploring its lessons. Now, Orson Welles was reported to have said, if you want a happy ending, that depends, of course, on where you stop your story. Think about that for a second. Our lives are in constant motion. We each have our own trajectory filled with triumph, tragedy, frustration, education, joy, sorrow, insights, disappointments. We are not static. We are constantly changing, evolving, and moving on and into the next stages of our timeline. And these Yamim Noraim, these high holy days, are all about stepping back and acknowledging where we are in the process of becoming, as we both write and live out our own stories. For too many of us, we want to hit the pause button when we feel that the current moment in which we are living has become the ultimate fulfillment of all that we wish for. 1 year ago, on October 10th, Sue and I stood under the chuppah while our daughter Ilana and our son-in-law Greg pledged their hearts and lives to one another at their wedding. The next day, we had to pack and pay bills. We wanted to stop time and revel in the power and the beauty of that moment under the chuppah. But of course, as much as we'd like to remain static, rewind, or skip ahead to the future, we cannot. As long as we live, we change, we grow, we rise and fall, we fulfill and we fail, all on our own time. On Rosh Hashanah, 10 days ago, we celebrated creation, new beginnings. We said, Hayom Harat Olam. This day, the world was created, but on Yom Kippur, we step back from renewal. We focus on our present while simultaneously embracing the future with a renewed sense of commitment and intention. And this is the essence of Kol Nidre. This is the essence of the next 24 hours. Tonight, we are given the gift of stepping outside of time and exploring our own personal truths. So as we examine the truths of our lives and the world in which we live, we need to acknowledge the fact that the very concept of truth has become a threatened commodity. This year, as part of our preparations and experience of these Yamim Noraim, these high holy days, we have been exploring the meaning and power of truth. About 2 weeks ago on Slichot, we invited the Reverend Canon Broderick Greer, one of the pastors at Denver's Episcopal Cathedral of St. John, to engage in a dialogue about the meaning and import of spiritual truth. Together we explored how God's presence or absence in our lives can help us to frame and comprehend the complexities, curiosities, and complications that we face alongside the moments of despondency and exaltation that bookend the ongoing saga of our unfolding life stories. Tomorrow afternoon, at the beginning of our Yom Kippur afternoon service, Leanne Colachiapo, the editor of the Denver Post, will join us as we explore how the very concept of truth is increasingly being challenged. We are bombarded on all sides daily by competing claims of veracity. Objectivity is quickly disappearing as we draw lines in the sand and refuse to engage with those whose political, religious, or historical worldview does not fit with our own. This past summer, I spent some time at the Rocky Mountain Song School, a 5-day intensive workshop at Planet Bluegrass in Lyons, Colorado, taught by professional songwriters, performers, and faculty from some of the most prestigious music schools around the country. This was my second of what I hope will become an annual attendance at Song School, and it filled my soul. One of the powerful aspects, the most powerful aspects of this annual get-together are the friendships and bonds that I've been able to forge. And this year, I met a man a little older than me, but not by much. And he was a great guitar player and songwriter. And we could see that we shared a similar love of the craft. We jammed together and we hit it off. And I asked him what he did when he wasn't writing songs. "I'm a therapist," he said. "What kind of therapy do you do?" I asked him. "Marriage and family counseling," he replied. "Are you in solo practice or in a group?" I asked. He said, "I work for a large nonprofit. Maybe you've heard of it, Focus on the Family." We are a religious organization that uses biblical principles to help families to stay healthy. I had heard of Focus on the Family, and I'm sure that many of you have as well. They are a fundamentalist Christian organization based in Colorado Springs that is right-wing, conservative, anti-gay, and has worked very hard to restrict or terminate choices around abortion and reproductive freedom. There have been numerous times over the past several years that I have stood on the opposite side of them at demonstrations and conference rooms, testifying for and against ballot initiatives at the state capitol, bills that have come before the legislature. Truly, I'm opposed to almost everything they support. So my first instinct was to shut him down and walk away. How could I engage with someone whose values were antithetical to my own? But I didn't. Because our interaction had nothing to do with politics, with social justice, or religion. We were just two old guys who liked to play the guitar and write songs. And after a while, I did ask him some pointed questions about how he might counsel a family who had a child who'd come out to their parents as gay or trans. I asked what he would do in situations where someone needed abortion care. And while we certainly did not agree on many issues, we were able to approach our differences with mutual respect and admiration because we saw the humanity in one another, not just our political or religious differences. And I have to tell you, this was a revelation for me. It left me very moved. My friends, there are two differing perspectives on truth: absolutism and relativism. Absolutism is a zero-sum game. It teaches, I am right and you have to be wrong, period. And there are places where absolutism is essential. When opinion conflicts with fact, truth is indisputable. For example, only one candidate can win an election. And yet, for those who hold an extreme absolutist agenda, it's not enough to present our beliefs or opinions as deeply felt. It is also essential to impose those beliefs on others as the only truth. And this, my friends, is very dangerous. We see this in theocratic or autocratic governments like Iran, Afghanistan, and Russia. Here in America, a disturbing tide of Christian nationalism is rising that wants to tear down the walls of separation between religion and state. And this, in turn, is amplified by media outlets that profit from creating bubbles of groupthink that foment and encourage extremists and conspiracy theorists, repeating falsehoods spewed by demagogues that are accepted as gospel by devotees hunger for red meat. We've already seen the devastating impact on society caused by election-denying propaganda that took place a year and a half ago on January 6th. Relativism, on the other hand, teaches my truth upholds my worldview but does not contradict yours. Now, while on paper this sounds wonderful, it too has problems. Sometimes we need to hold on to absolute truths. As Daniel Patrick Moynihan famously once said, "You may be entitled to your opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts." If one person's belief system threatens the health, safety, and sometimes even the stability of society, there cannot be a level playing field. For example, here in Colorado, we know all too well the devastation that has been caused by the proliferation of firearms. Too many innocent lives have been lost at the hands of disturbed individuals whose personal demons told them to kill innocent men, women, and children. The idolatry inherent in the Wild West cowboy culture promoted by the gun lobby is a plague upon our nation. We see it in the blood that runs in our schools and on our streets. I'm not saying we should have no guns, but we have to do it with sanity. At the same time, there is a place for relativism, especially when it comes to faith. When I was just a young rabbi, I came across a concept inherent to interfaith dialogue called parallel truths. This teaches that two deeply held and seemingly contradictory beliefs can exist side by side, and truth and objectivity are not necessarily in conflict with one another. If, for example, I were to say, Schwader Camp is the best summer camp in the nation, am I lying? Well, it depends. If I measure my statement by purely objective standards, then there are probably many who could prove me wrong by looking at multiple standards of comparison. What kind of facilities do we have? Do we have a swimming pool? Do we have, fancy air conditioning? Of course not. We don't want it. On the other hand, if my statement is based on my personal truth with a capital T, then it's not a false statement. Similarly, when I state that my faith is what is true to me, it does not mean that your faith is not true to you. So long as there is no attempt to enforce a particular belief on others, then anyone is encouraged to their own beliefs, their own truth. Now there's a midrash that teaches that the word for truth in Hebrew is emet. It's up there. And it's comprised of three Hebrew letters, Aleph, Mem, and Taf. The first, the middle, and the last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. As such, emet, truth, is all-encompassing. We can only arrive at truth when we allow ourselves to consider all ends of the spectrum. The 16th century legend of the Golem of Prague, created by Rabbi Judah Loew, teaches that Rabbi Loew wrote on the golem's forehead the word emet, truth. That's what animated the golem, the Frankenstein monster, if you will, and it created this living being out of clay. But Rabbi Loew lost control of his monster, and so the golem had to be destroyed. What did the rabbi do? He took the three-letter word emet and he erased the aleph. He was left with two letters, mem and taf, which spells out the word met, which means death. Death. When truth is perverted, it can literally spell the death of society. Our differing perceptions of truth are contributing to an environment of toxicity. How many of us have family members, friends, and neighbors that we have shut out of our lives because of an inability to agree with or even discuss anything without getting into heated political arguments? We need to learn how to accept our disagreements, even our differing understandings of truth, if we are able to live together. After the first service this evening, an individual came up to me and said, "Rabbi, I really had a problem with your sermon. I'm a conservative." I said, "Let's talk about it." "Really?" That's what I just said. In the Talmud, two great schools of thought, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, provide us with a model of tolerance even when we disagree. In the history of rabbinic debate, they almost never agreed with one another. The split between them was so deep that according to the Talmud, the Torah became like two Torahs when they would debate its meaning. But they followed two rules that we must learn as a society. First, even though they vehemently disagreed with each other on matters of Jewish law and custom, the students of Beit Shammai and the students of Beit Hillel ate in each other's homes, and their children married each other, it says in the Talmud. They did not let disputes in one area prevent them from living together in community. And when it came to determining who was right, we learned the law would generally follow Beit Hillel, not because they were more lenient, although they generally were, but because the students of Beit Hillel, we are taught, would begin their argument by teaching both their own position and that of Bet Shammai. In fact, they would teach the position of Bet Shammai first. So our task on this day of truth-telling is to try to follow the examples of Beit Hillel and Bet Shammai as we forge a pathway that incorporates both the beautiful and the painful truths of our lives. Now is the time to address the feelings of disconnection that we feel with others and try to find common ground. Life is too short to allow our disagreements to separate us from the ones we live amongst and love. And so, as I do every year, once again on this holiest night of the year, I challenge you to find the truths that you can share with the most important people in your lives. Tell the people that you love them. Reach out to those who need you. Ask for help from those who want nothing more than to be there for you. Make amends with those who have hurt you and to those whom you have hurt as well. Now, I know that there are times when forgiveness and reconciliation are not possible, when chasms have been created by callousness or even worse, by abuse. Sometimes absolutism cannot be overcome. Not every action can be forgiven, and not everyone can forgive. And yet, whenever possible, we must try to forgive those who come to us in true repentance, even those who can't or won't. Holding on to grudges takes up too much of our time, our psychic energy. There are more important things to do in life. And this is the ultimate truth that we must embrace on this Kol Nidre Eve. And so we pray that our search for truth might bring us closer to one another. Gmar Chatima Tova. May we all be sealed for blessing in the book of life. Amen.